You are losing something every single day and you barely notice it happening. Your time, your patience, and your mental clarity are slowly being drained by people who refuse to think. You try explaining things calmly, you try being reasonable, you try using logic, but the conversation always ends the same way. They become louder, more defensive, and somehow you leave the discussion feeling like you are the problem. The uncomfortable truth is that intelligence does not protect you from stupidity. In fact, it often attracts it. People who cannot think clearly are drawn toward those who can because they expect you to fix their confusion. But every time you try, you pay a price. You were raised to believe that if you explain things clearly enough, people will understand you. You were told that logic wins arguments and truth persuades people, but the world rarely works that way. Most conversations are not about truth at all, they are about ego. And ego cannot tolerate someone who sees through its illusions. When a foolish person hears a better argument, they do not feel enlightened. They feel threatened. That is why simple discussions turn into endless arguments. You are playing chess while they are flipping the board. The more intelligent you are, the more exhausting this becomes because you can see the chaos before it even begins. 200 years ago, a philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer understood this reality with brutal clarity. He was not interested in comforting illusions. He believed that most human conflict comes from ignorance combined with pride. Schopenhauer wrote something that intelligent people quietly recognize as true. Never argue with a fool, onlookers may not be able to tell the difference. That sentence alone explains years of frustration. When you argue with someone who refuses to think, the discussion does not elevate them, it pulls you down. Intelligent people eventually learn their first survival strategy: silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. When someone insists on misunderstanding you, the most powerful move is to stop explaining. You have probably experienced this moment before. Someone says something obviously wrong and you begin correcting them step by step, but the more evidence you provide, the more stubborn they become. This happens because foolish people treat conversations like battles for ego instead of searches for truth. The moment they feel challenged, their mind closes and the goal becomes victory, not understanding. This is why intelligent people learn to withdraw from pointless debates. When the conversation becomes irrational, silence ends the conflict faster than logic ever could. The second lesson intelligent people learn is distance. Not everyone deserves access to your mind. When you spend too much time around people who constantly argue, complain, or refuse to think, your own thinking becomes heavier and slower. Energy is contagious, and foolish energy spreads quickly. Protecting your mental clarity is not arrogance, it is survival. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. You are not rejecting people out of cruelty, you are protecting your focus. Imagine closing a heavy door between you and the noise of a chaotic crowd. On the other side of that door is peace. Intelligent people slowly realize that the most valuable resource they have is attention, and attention should not be wasted on those who refuse to learn. If you understand this principle, drop this in the comments. I protect my peace. The third lesson is even harder to accept. Some people do not want truth, they want validation. When you offer a new perspective, it threatens the story they tell themselves about who they are. So instead of learning, they defend their illusion. Intelligent people eventually learn restraint. Not every mistake needs correction. Not every wrong statement requires your response. Sometimes the most intelligent action is to watch quietly and allow reality to teach the lesson for you. If you recognize this pattern, drop this in the comments. I choose silence over foolish arguments. Another strategy intelligent people develop is observation. Before speaking, they study the person in front of them. Within minutes, certain signals appear. Arrogance without knowledge, certainty without evidence, loud confidence combined with shallow thinking. These signs reveal whether the conversation will be productive or pointless. When you learn to read these signals early, you save enormous amounts of energy. If you agree with this principle, drop this below. Silence is power. The fifth lesson is choosing your battles carefully. Every argument costs something: time, attention, emotional control. Intelligent people invest those resources, only where there is genuine curiosity and openness. If someone only wants to dominate the conversation, walking away becomes a victory. Refusing the fight is often the smartest move. The final strategy is emotional control. The greatest power you can develop when dealing with foolish people is the ability to remain calm while they become chaotic. When you stop reacting, their influence disappears. The argument loses fuel. Their frustration grows while your clarity remains untouched. If you are still here, drop this in the comments. I control my energy. While foolish people spend years arguing in circles, intelligent people direct their energy somewhere else entirely. They build skills, they build knowledge, they build a future that does not depend on convincing anyone of anything. And eventually a strange shift happens. The voices that once irritated you begin to fade into background noise. You start recognizing a pattern that was always there. Stupidity is loud, emotional, and desperate for attention. Intelligence is quiet, disciplined, and focused on progress. At this point, something important changes inside you. The old version of you that tried to fix everyone, explain everything, and win every argument begins to disappear. The old you is dead. In its place stands someone far more controlled. Someone who understands that words are tools, not weapons to be thrown at every problem. When you master this mindset, you become dangerous in a very specific way. You become focused. Your mind stops wasting energy on pointless battles and begins aiming itself toward long-term growth. You are a weapon, pointed at your own future. And once you understand this fully, you no longer depend on approval from people who refuse to understand you. Their opinions lose their power. Their noise loses its importance. You begin walking your own path with a quiet kind of authority. Because the ultimate freedom comes from realizing something most people never discover. You belong to no one. Some people will hear this message and dismiss it immediately. Others will feel uncomfortable because it forces them to rethink how they spend their time and energy. But a small number of listeners will recognize the truth instantly. Those people know exactly how much of their life has already been wasted arguing with the wrong people. If you are one of them, you already know what to do. Subscribe. Not because someone asked you to, but because you recognize the value of ideas that challenge the way you see the world. And before you leave, think carefully about this question and answer it in the comments. What is the most foolish argument you ever wasted your time on?